There are wounds the world does not see, scars that lie beneath the surface, hidden behind weary smiles and silent prayers. You have carried the weight of betrayal, of disappointment, of being hurt by those you once trusted. And though you walk among others, your soul whispers the pain only heaven seems to hear. Perhaps you have loved with a heart unguarded, offered kindness where it was undeserved, and in return received rejection, deceit, or indifference, the sting of broken trust, the ache of being cast aside. These are not just human sufferings. They are spiritual trials that shake the very foundation of our faith. You ask, "Why, Lord? Why would you allow them to hurt me? Why did you watch as I was wronged?" But have you considered that even your suffering is not unseen by God? Have you pondered the possibility that your pain is not the end of your story, but the beginning of His divine restoration? The Bible tells us in Psalm 34:18, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." What if the very thing that wounded you is the instrument through which God is preparing to heal and elevate you? Think of Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned. If there was ever a man who had reason to despair, it was him. But in his suffering, God was orchestrating something far greater. What seemed like abandonment was actually alignment. Genesis 50:20 reminds us of Joseph's words, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Could it be that the betrayal you endured was not a defeat, but a divine setup? Could it be that the hands that hurt you were only a tool in God's grand design to shape you into the person He has called you to be? The enemy works through people, often those closest to us. He whispers lies into their hearts, turning their affections into malice, their loyalty into betrayal. But what the enemy does not know is that every wound inflicted on a child of God is seen by the Almighty Himself. Romans 12:19 declares, "Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.'" You were not abandoned, you were not forgotten. Every tear you shed, every silent prayer, every moment you felt discarded, God saw it all, and He is a God of restoration. He is the one who turns ashes into beauty, who lifts the broken-hearted and places them on solid ground. Do you remember Job? A righteous man, yet he lost everything, his wealth, his family, his health. His friends accused him, his wife told him to curse God, and yet in his suffering God was working. By the end of Job's trial, the Lord restored him twice as much as he had before. Job 42:10. That is the nature of God. He does not merely heal, He restores. He does not simply mend what is broken, He makes it better than before. So, I ask you, will you trust Him with your pain? Will you surrender your wounds, your disappointments, your betrayals into the hands of the one who promises to redeem them? Or will you allow bitterness to take root, chaining you to the very people who hurt you? The choice is before you. Will you hold on to the wounds, or will you release them into the hands of God and allow Him to restore you? They constantly manipulate you. Manipulation is a subtle, insidious poison. It does not come in loud accusations or obvious betrayals. Instead, it seeps into your life through carefully chosen words, quiet guilt trips, and subtle distortions of reality. You may not even realize it's happening until you are deep in the cycle, questioning your own thoughts, your own worth, your own sanity. The people who hurt you the most are often the ones who know exactly how to control you, not through force, but through the careful twisting of emotions, responsibilities, and guilt. A manipulator operates in the shadows, never wanting to appear as the aggressor. Instead, they make you believe that you are the one at fault, that your concerns are invalid, that your reactions are excessive. They twist the truth just enough to make you second-guess yourself. You start to wonder if you are overreacting, if you are too sensitive, if you are the one being difficult. And while you are busy apologizing for things you shouldn't be sorry for, they continue to pull the strings, dictating the course of your emotions, your decisions, your very identity. But God sees it all. He sees how they have played with your heart, how they have used your kindness as a tool against you. Psalm 37, verse 12-13 says, "The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them, but the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming." They may have thought they were in control, but they have forgotten that God is watching. A manipulator thrives on control. They take advantage of your love, your loyalty, your patience. They make you feel like you owe them something, that their happiness depends on you. And so you stay. You keep trying, keep sacrificing, keep bending, until you are nothing more than a shadow of who you used to be. But this is not love. Love does not manipulate. Love does not enslave. Love does not come with conditions. Think of Delilah and Samson. She manipulated him, coaxing him into revealing the secret of his strength, not out of love, but out of deceit. She played the role of someone who cared, yet her actions were driven by self-interest. And when Samson finally gave in, she betrayed him without hesitation. This is the nature of manipulation. It disguises itself as care, but its true motive is control. And perhaps you have been caught in such a relationship. You gave your heart, your trust, your effort, and in return you received deception. But do not despair. God does not leave his children in the hands of manipulators. Just as he restored Samson's strength in the final moments of his life, he will restore you. The chains they placed on you, the chains of guilt, of obligation, of fear, will be broken by the one who is greater than any manipulator, greater than any deceiver. 1 Corinthians 13:6 says, "Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth." Any relationship that requires you to live in fear, confusion, or constant guilt is not from God. The Lord does not operate in manipulation. He operates in truth. When you align yourself with him, you will begin to see things clearly. You will see how they used your kindness against you. You will see how they made you feel guilty for wanting respect. You will see how they twisted the truth to keep you bound. And once you see, you will be free. The restoration of God does not merely remove toxic people from your life, it removes the hold they had over you. You will no longer live under the weight of their words, their expectations, their demands. You will no longer feel responsible for their happiness, their mood swings, their approval. God will break the invisible chains they wrapped around you, and when he does, you will no longer look back with regret. God is a God of justice. He does not stand idly by while his children are manipulated and used. Romans 12:19 declares, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, 'It is mine to avenge. I will repay,' says the Lord." You do not need to fight for justice. God himself will deal with them. And when he restores you, it will not be a partial healing. It will be complete. Where you were once confused, he will give you clarity. Where you were once weak, he will make you strong. Where they drained you, he will fill you. They drain your energy and joy. Some wounds are not inflicted with words or actions, but through the slow, relentless exhaustion of your spirit. There are people who do not strike with violence, who do not curse with their tongues, but who take from you in a way that leaves you empty. They pull at your heart, your mind, your soul, always needing, always demanding, always expecting you to be there to carry the weight of their emotions, their problems, their burdens. And you, out of love, out of loyalty, out of the goodness God placed within you, give and give until there is nothing left. But what happens when you are the one who needs support? What happens when you reach out, when you need encouragement, when your own soul is weary? You find them absent. They disappear when you need them most, when your spirit cries out for someone to lift you the way you have lifted them. You begin to realize that your relationship is not built on mutual care, but on one-sided dependence. They do not pour into you as you pour into them. They drain you like a vessel they believe will never run dry. God did not design you to live depleted. Isaiah 40:29 tells us, "He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might he increases strength." Yet, how can you walk in his strength when you are constantly surrounded by people who drain you? How can you grow in his purpose when you are shackled to relationships that sap your energy and leave you too exhausted to move forward? Think of Jesus himself. Even as the Son of God, he did not allow himself to be endlessly drained by the crowds. Yes, he healed, he ministered, he gave of himself, but he also withdrew. Luke 5:16 says, "But he would withdraw to desolate places and pray." He understood that without time in the presence of the Father, without rest, without renewal, he could not continue his work. If Jesus needed time to replenish his strength, how much more do you? But toxic people do not care about your need for restoration. They do not care that your soul is weary. They do not recognize the fatigue in your voice, the heaviness in your heart, the exhaustion in your eyes. They take and take because they see you as an endless source of energy, never realizing that you are human, that you too need rest. And so you begin to change. Your joy, once vibrant, fades into fatigue. The things that once brought you peace no longer seem to matter. You lose sight of your own needs, your own dreams, because you are always carrying the burdens of others. But God did not call you to be a sacrificial offering to toxic people. He calls you to be a light. But even a light must be fueled, must be tended, must be cared for. Matthew 11:28 is a divine invitation. "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Have you ever noticed how different you feel after spending time with certain people? Some leave you feeling uplifted, encouraged, at peace. Others leave you feeling heavy, anxious, emotionally drained. This is not an accident. Spiritual exhaustion is real. There are people who carry such negativity, such chaos, that they rob you of your peace without saying a single harsh word. 1 Corinthians 15:33 warns, "Do not be deceived, bad company ruins good morals." If the people around you constantly leave you feeling drained, disconnected, distant from God, it is a sign that they are not meant to walk this journey with you. And perhaps you have stayed in these relationships because you feel guilty. You tell yourself that God calls you to love, to be patient, to bear with others. And while that is true, there is a difference between loving someone and allowing them to destroy you. Jesus himself did not entrust himself to everyone. John 2:24-25 says, "But Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man." You must ask yourself, is this relationship drawing me closer to God, or is it pulling me away? Is it filling my spirit with joy, or is it leaving me empty? Your energy, your joy, your peace, these are gifts from God. And just as you would not allow someone to steal your material possessions, why would you allow them to steal something far more valuable? They disregard your feelings. There is a unique kind of pain that comes not from insults or betrayal, but from being unheard, unseen, and unvalued. It is the pain of speaking from the depths of your heart only to have your words dismissed. It is the ache of explaining your hurt only for someone to act as if it doesn't matter. There are people in your life who have treated your feelings as an inconvenience, as something to be brushed aside, ignored, or invalidated. They have made you feel as if your emotions are not real, as if your experiences are exaggerated, as if your suffering is nothing more than a nuisance to them. But God does not ignore your pain. He is the one who created you with emotions, the one who listens when no one else does. Psalm 34:17 declares, "The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles." He does not disregard you. He does not dismiss you. He does not tell you to just get over it the way others have. He hears every silent cry, every suppressed sorrow, every moment of frustration when you wished someone, anyone, would just acknowledge what you were feeling. The people who disregard your feelings are the ones who never truly valued you in the first place. When you tried to express yourself, they shut you down. When you shared your burdens, they rolled their eyes. When you needed comfort, they offered silence. This is not love. This is not friendship. This is not what God intended for you. 1 Peter 3:8 says, "Finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble." A relationship that lacks sympathy, that lacks compassion, that lacks care, is not a relationship that God approves of. Think of Hannah in the Bible. She was deeply distressed because she could not bear children, and when she cried out to God in the temple, even the priest, Eli, misjudged her pain. He assumed she was drunk, dismissing her sorrow without understanding the depth of her suffering. 1 Samuel 1:12-16. But did God disregard her? No, he heard her cries, he saw her brokenness, and in time he blessed her with a son, Samuel. How many times have you been misunderstood the way Hannah was? How many times have you reached out in pain, only to be met with indifference? Perhaps you have been told that you are too sensitive, that you are too emotional, that you overthink everything. But the truth is, God gave you emotions for a reason. Your pain is not an overreaction. Your feelings are not irrelevant. When people choose to ignore your pain, they are revealing more about themselves than about you. A person who truly loves you will care about your pain, even if they do not fully understand it. Romans 12:15 instructs us to rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. A toxic person does neither. They refuse to celebrate your victories because they resent your joy, and they refuse to acknowledge your pain because it is inconvenient for them. But here is the truth that many fail to recognize. Disregarding someone's feelings is a form of emotional cruelty. When someone constantly invalidates your emotions, they are communicating one thing: you do not matter. And if you have spent years surrounded by people like this, it is no wonder that doubt has crept into your heart. You begin to question yourself. Am I overreacting? Do my feelings even matter? Should I just stay silent? But God's word makes it clear. Your voice, your emotions, your pain, they matter to Him. The enemy wants to use toxic people to silence you, to make you believe that you are not worthy of love, that your thoughts and emotions are meaningless. But God does not silence His children. He listens. He welcomes your cries, your prayers, your deepest confessions. Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Think about that. Every tear you have shed, every moment of sorrow that others ignored, God has seen and recorded. Toxic people will try to convince you that your feelings are not important, but God tells you the opposite. You are seen, you are heard, you are valued. Those who disregard you do not deserve the power to define your worth. They only value you when they need something. There are people in your life who only show up when they need something. When they are struggling, they remember your number. When they need advice, they suddenly remember that you exist. When life becomes difficult, they turn to you, not out of love, but out of necessity. And yet, when you need them, Where are they? When you are struggling, when you are hurting, when you need a friend, suddenly they are too busy, too distracted, too preoccupied with their own lives. This kind of relationship is not built on love. It is built on convenience. A toxic person does not see you as a valuable individual, but as a resource, someone to call when they are in trouble, someone to lean on when their world is falling apart, someone to use when it benefits them. And when they no longer need you, they disappear. Proverbs 18:24 warns us, "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." A true friend is not one who only shows up in moments of desperation. A true friend is present in joy and in sorrow, in success and in struggle, in abundance and in lack. But those who only value you when they need something do not see you as a friend. They see you as an opportunity. Think of the story of the prodigal son in Luke 15. When he had his inheritance, he was surrounded by people. When his pockets were full, he was never alone. But as soon as the money ran out, so did his so-called friends. They were never truly there for him. They were there for what he could provide, and when he had nothing left to offer, they discarded him without a second thought. How many times have you felt this same pain? How many times have you given, helped, supported, only to realize that you were nothing more than a stepping stone for someone else's comfort? It is a heartbreaking realization, but it is one that God sees. He sees the moments when you have been used. He sees the times you have been taken for granted, and He will not allow this to continue. God's love is not like the love of selfish people. Isaiah 41:10 reminds us, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Unlike those who only value you in their moments of need, God values you in every season, in every situation, in every moment of your life. But toxic people will try to convince you that their love is real. They will act as if they care until their crisis is over. And then, silence, distance, absence. They hurt you, but God will restore you. There is a reason why Jesus surrounded himself with a few, not with the masses. He understood that not everyone who walks with you is truly for you. John 2:24-25 tells us, "But Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man." Jesus knew that many followed him not because they loved him, but because they wanted something from him. They wanted miracles, they wanted healing, they wanted blessings, but they did not want him. And this is what you must understand. Not everyone who calls you their friend actually cares about you. Not everyone who seeks you out actually values you. Some are there for what you provide, not for who you are. But do not let this discourage you, for God is a God of justice. He will remove those who use you and replace them with those who truly love you. They use your kindness against you. Kindness is a gift from God, a divine trait that reflects His love through us. It is an extension of His mercy, a way in which we show compassion to others. Yet, in a world where selfishness thrives, kindness is often mistaken for weakness. There are people who do not see your goodness as a virtue, but as something to be taken advantage of. They see your willingness to help as an opportunity to manipulate, your patience as an invitation to exploit, your forgiving heart as permission to mistreat you repeatedly. Matthew 10:16 warns, "Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." God calls you to be kind, but He does not call you to be blind. He does not require you to tolerate mistreatment simply because you are a good person. Many have misinterpreted Christian kindness to mean passive suffering, but Scripture does not command you to be an open door for abuse. Kindness does not mean allowing yourself to be used. A toxic person studies you. They recognize that you have a heart that is willing to serve, that you would rather endure pain than cause it, that you are quick to forgive even when forgiveness is undeserved. And so they push boundaries. At first, it is small, asking for favors without reciprocation, crossing limits you never set. Then it grows. They make demands, expecting you to comply. They do wrong, expecting you to overlook it. And with each instance, they grow more confident in their ability to use you. But God sees when your kindness is being abused. He sees when your good heart is taken for granted, when your patience is stretched thin, when your loyalty is used as a weapon against you. Ecclesiastes 3:01 reminds us, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. There is a time for kindness, and there is a time for wisdom. There is a time for patience, and there is a time to walk away." Consider the story of Moses and Pharaoh. Moses came in obedience to God, speaking words of deliverance. But Pharaoh, a hard-hearted man, refused to listen. No matter how many chances Moses gave, Pharaoh remained unchanged. Exodus 9:12 says, "But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not listen to them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses." There are people who will never change, no matter how much kindness you show them. And like Moses, you must learn to discern when it is time to stop pleading and let God deal with them. There is a fine line between godly patience and foolish endurance. Proverbs 26:11 warns, "As a dog returns to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly." If someone repeatedly takes advantage of your kindness, mistreats you, and disregards your feelings, they are showing you who they truly are. And when someone shows you who they are over and over, believe them. The enemy wants you to believe that walking away from toxic relationships is unkind. But walking away is not cruel, it is necessary. Jesus himself set boundaries. Luke 9:05 instructs, "And wherever they do not receive you, when you leave that town, shake off the dust from your feet as a testimony against them." If Jesus taught his disciples to walk away from those who refused to accept the truth, why should you remain in relationships that drain and abuse you? Your kindness is a blessing, not a curse. But God did not give you a kind heart so that others could break it. He did not fill you with love so that others could exploit it. Those who use your kindness against you are not truly with you, and he will remove them in due time. They make you doubt your worth. There is a silent war that takes place in the mind, a battle between what God says about you and what people have made you believe about yourself. The enemy works through those closest to you, those whose words carry weight, whose opinions shape your thoughts. And before you even realize what's happening, you start questioning yourself. You start wondering if you are enough, if you are worthy, if you have any real value. This is how toxic people operate. They do not always break you with cruelty. Sometimes they break you by making you doubt yourself. At first, it's subtle. A small comment that makes you feel less than. A look of disapproval when you try something new. A dismissive response when you share your dreams. Over time, it becomes more intentional. They compare you to others, making you feel as if you are falling behind. They remind you of your past failures, as if they define your future. They plant seeds of self-doubt, making you rely on their validation rather than God's truth. And soon, you stop believing in yourself. You stop seeing the person God created you to be. You start living in the shadow of their opinions, their criticisms, their expectations. But God never intended for you to see yourself through the eyes of those who diminish you. He created you in His image. Genesis 1:27 declares, "So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them." You are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are a divine creation, formed with purpose, designed with intention. When people make you feel unworthy, they are not just insulting. The enemy knows that once you start doubting your worth, you will settle. You will stay in places where you are not valued. You will tolerate mistreatment. You will shrink yourself to fit into spaces where you were never meant to be. This is why the enemy uses people to attack your identity. If he can convince you that you are not enough, he can keep you from stepping into the life God has for you. But God has already spoken over you. Psalm 139 verse 14 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. You are not ordinary. You are not meant to live in doubt and insecurity. You are meant to walk in the confidence of who you are in Him. Think of Gideon. When God called him to be a mighty warrior, he did not see himself that way. He doubted, he questioned, he believed he was too small, too weak, too insignificant. Judges 6:15 records his words. Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. But what did God say? I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. The truth was never about Gideon's weakness. It was about God's presence. And the same is true for you. People will try to make you feel small, but their words do not define you. Their rejection does not reduce your worth. Their criticism does not determine your destiny. God does. Romans 8:31 reminds us, if God is for us, who can be against us? No matter how many people have tried to tear you down, no matter how many times you have been made to feel like you are not enough, God's word stands above it all. Toxic people do not want you to recognize your worth because if you do, they lose control. They cannot manipulate someone who knows their value. They cannot keep someone who understands they deserve better. They cannot hold on to someone who realizes they were never meant to stay in a place where they are not appreciated. When you start to see yourself the way God sees you, you will no longer tolerate the things that once kept you bound. Jesus never begged for people to see his worth. He did not chase after those who rejected him. He knew who he was, and he walked in that truth. When people spoke against him, he remained firm. When they tried to diminish him, he did not lower himself to seek their approval. John 10:14 records his words, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. He did not need validation from the world, and neither do you. If you have spent your life seeking approval from people who never truly valued you, it is time to step away. If you have allowed the words of others to make you feel like you are not enough, it is time to let go. You are not who they say you are. You are not defined by their rejection, their indifference, their opinions. You are who God says you are, and that is enough. They distance you from God. There are people in your life who do not directly oppose your faith, yet their presence slowly pulls you away from God. It does not happen all at once. At first it's subtle, small compromises, distractions, conversations that make you question your beliefs. They do not attack your faith outright, but they make you comfortable in environments where God is absent. They fill your mind with worldly concerns, urging you to prioritize success, relationships, or comfort over spiritual growth. And before you even realize what's happening, you find yourself drifting, your connection with God growing weaker, your prayers becoming less frequent, your heart becoming distant. The Bible warns against this. 2 Corinthians 6:14 says, Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? This does not mean that you must isolate yourself from the world, but it does mean that you must be careful about the influence others have over you. Some relationships push you toward God, while others make you indifferent to Him. If you spend time with those who do not value God, their mindset will begin to shape yours. It often starts with the small things. You miss one day of prayer because you are busy with them. You stop reading the Word because they make you feel like it is unnecessary. You begin to compromise your values, excusing behaviors that you once knew were wrong, and the enemy works through these moments, knowing that distance from God does not happen overnight. It happens gradually, step by step, until one day you wake up and realize that your spirit feels empty. Think of Solomon, a man blessed with unparalleled wisdom, chosen by God, given a kingdom, and yet his downfall came through the relationships he allowed into his life. 1 Kings 11:04 says, "For when Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been." His relationships led him away from the very God who had blessed him. If even a man as wise as Solomon could be led astray, how much more must we guard our hearts? Toxic people do not always appear toxic at first. Some disguise themselves as friends, as loved ones, as people who claim to care about you. But their influence speaks louder than their words. If being around someone makes you pray less, makes you sin more, makes you question what you once knew was true, then they are not meant to walk this journey with you. The Bible is clear in 1 Corinthians 15:33. "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals." You may think that you are strong enough to remain unchanged, but little by little their words, their actions, their habits begin to shift your perspective. God desires a close relationship with you, but that relationship requires intentionality. If someone is pulling you away from Him, they are standing in the way of your spiritual growth. And the more you allow that influence to remain in your life, the more distant God's voice will become. You will start to rely on their opinions more than His word. You will start seeking their approval instead of seeking His presence. And that is exactly what the enemy wants. Jesus Himself showed us how to handle relationships that threaten our spiritual connection. When Peter, one of His closest disciples, spoke words that opposed God's plan, Jesus responded firmly in Matthew 16:23. "Get behind me, Satan, you are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." He did not tolerate words that went against God's purpose. He did not entertain influences that could pull him off course. He recognized the danger and immediately rejected it. If Jesus, the Son of God, set boundaries when someone spoke words that could lead him astray, then why should we hesitate to do the same? Some people may not be evil, but they are distractions. They may not mean harm, but they are preventing you from growing spiritually. And if you allow them to remain in your inner circle, they will continue to pull you further away from the path God has set for you. God is calling you back. He is reminding you that your relationship with Him is too precious to sacrifice for the sake of people who do not value Him. He is showing you that some connections must be severed, not out of hatred, but out of obedience. Because at the end of the day, the only relationship that truly matters, the one that will never fail you, never leave you, never deceive you, is the one you have with Him. They hurt you, but God will restore you. Every wound, every betrayal, every moment of rejection, none of it has gone unnoticed. God saw the manipulation, the exhaustion, the disregard, the way they made you doubt yourself. He saw how they only valued you when they needed something, how they drained your spirit, and how they pulled you away from Him. And now He is stepping in. You may feel broken, but God is not finished with you. The pain they caused was not your ending. It was a divine setup for something greater. Psalm 147:3 says, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." You were never meant to stay in the same place where you were hurt. You were never meant to keep carrying the burden of relationships that drained you, used you, and distanced you from God's presence. There is freedom in letting go. There is healing in surrendering it all to Him. God is calling you into a season of restoration. He is removing the people who were never meant to walk with you into your future. He is cutting off relationships that kept you bound to cycles of pain. Isaiah 43:18. 19 declares, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? What is ahead of you is greater than what you left behind." The people God removes, He replaces with better. The love you never received from them, He will pour out in abundance. The strength they tried to break, He will rebuild. So, let this be your turning point. Stop looking for closure from those who never valued you. Stop waiting for apologies that may never come. You do not need them to validate your pain in order for God to heal you. He alone is enough. Step into His restoration, into His love, into the fullness of what He has for you. They hurt you, but God will restore you. And when He does, you will look back and realize that everything you lost was never a loss. It was God making room for something far greater. Closing remarks. If this message spoke to you, if you feel that God is calling you into a new season, take a moment to reflect. Are you holding on to people that God is asking you to release? Are you staying in places where your soul is starving? It's time to trust Him. Drop a comment below and share how this spoke to you. And if you need prayer, let us know. We are standing with you in faith. God is restoring you. Your best days are ahead. Stay strong, stay faithful, and remember, what was meant to break you will be the very thing that builds you. God bless you.